In the last three columns on the left-wing extremism, we discussed policies, we discussed institutions, and we discussed how some individuals from the Indian Administration Service, Indian Police Service, and Indian Forest Service set the ground uh, for the last and the final assault, which is Samadhan. Samadhan's English meaning, literal translation for Samadhan, is solution. And this actually is a very important initiative which was taken by the Ministry of Home Affairs under the leadership of Amit Shah. And here, the eight alphabets of Samadhan, each of them resonates with a particular thought. For example, S in Samadhan is for smart leadership, A is for aggressive strategy, M is for motivation and training, A is for actionable intelligence, D for the dashboard, which had metrics of the key performance indicators and the key result areas. H was for harnessing technology. A was action plan for each theater. And N, the final N, was for no access to financing. And all these eight, uh, you know, eight matrices, they were the ones which defined the strategy of Samadhan. So we'll start with smart leadership. And the smart leadership of the IPS officers who were involved in a day-to-day, almost hand-to-hand combat with the Naxals. And this includes the current IG of CRPF of Bastar, Shaleen, whom I had the privilege to train at the LBS Academy. And of course, there is Ganendra Pratap Singh, who's the DG of the CRPF there. We have Arun Dev Gautam of the 92 batch, Vivekanand Sinha of the 1996 batch, and the young braveheart Sundar Raj, who spent 7 years in Bastar. Now, these officers have laid the foundation of the anti-Naxal struggle in the state, which was most affected by this, and it is because of their ability to harness local intelligence, organize the raids, ground level strike, and that is what ensured what we call in the security parlance as area domination. However, this is what happened in Chhattisgarh. But before that, the first significant intervention, the first organized intervention, was done by the Greyhounds Force, which had been set up in Andhra Pradesh. And for that, the credit must go to K.S. Vyas, who had been able to mobilize these young men, this young cadre of Andhra Pradesh policemen, all of whom were physically very fit, all of whom were below 35, all of whom volunteered to work in this force. And after their period of service here, they were then sent to the regular units of the Andhra Pradesh police. Now, that is before Andhra Pradesh and Telangana became two states. And this force has been one of the most well trained, well armed, combat ready forces in the country. And we've had high ranking officials like Madhusudan Reddy and the ADGP Intelligence Mahesh Ladda, who have been leading the move in Andhra Pradesh. Again, and let me just quote from a recent interview which Sundar Raj had given on the 31st of March, that is on the day when it was officially declared that LWE is no longer a threat. And he said, quote, all security forces and agencies, including the DRG, that is the District Reserve Guard, the Basta Fighters, the Cobra Force, the STF, and the Central Paramilitary Forces, they all came together with a single objective to meet the goal. Unquote. And quote again, the establishment of security camps over the years proved to be a decisive factor. With forces deployed across the region and camps set up strategically, the Naxals found it increasingly difficult to escape, and this choked their supply network. Top leaders and mid-level cadres were either neutralized or forced to surrender. So this is the background. Now, that is how area domination happens. And the second alphabet that we have is about actionable intelligence. And the point to note is that they were all looking for for sources of information, and these sources of information come to them because they were all putting their feet on the ground. They were talking to people, and I'd like to highlight here the importance of Buster fighters in the anti-Naxal operations, because when you have local people who are involved with you in the operations, then your ability to sift through the murmurs, to understand what is happening on the ground, because the whispers, the murmurs, what is happening in the bazaar, what is happening in the heart, what is happening during various festivals, what is happening during marriage processions. That is how all these nuances are captured. And therefore, we now come to the dashboard for the key resources and for harnessing technology. Here again, point is that if you do not measure something, you cannot really act upon it, and that is what we were recording. I mean, that is what the Samadhan was planning. It was looking not just at the main task here was to see that the Maoists or the Naxalites, they surrender, because a surrender is far more important, far more effective than an encounter or than neutralizing the other person, because the surrender is also a signal that, look, I give up. I give up not just because I can't fight, but sometimes I give up because I am convinced that the ideology that I was trying to follow or that I was following is not going to work, and therefore let's get into the mainstream. So I think this is something which is very important. And one of the reasons why this has happened was because of superior technology, superior communication, weapon systems, night vision devices, bulletproof jackets, medical equipment, including anti-malarial nets and anti-malarial drugs. In fact, the biggest threat in a forested area is not from the humans, but from the mosquitoes and from leeches and from snakes and from scorpions. So you need to be well equipped for all this. Now, this also means that also meant that the officers and staff engaged in the delivery of development services were now more confident of reaching out to these communities and forming a virtuous loop. It's a virtuous loop. Now, you either have positive loops or you have negative loops. So when you have positive loops, it reduces the support for insurgency, and the narrative of the exploitative state, which the Maoists were trying to build up, that the state can do nothing right. I mean, that got reversed. Next point is about theaterization of operations, because we've all heard of the joint or the integrated defense in the army, Air Force, Navy, that is defense forces, where you have a theater. For example, the Andamans is now a theater. So it means that the Army, Air Force, and Navy, they work together. Now, theater commands came up during the Second World War, where it became very clear that the jointness of operation has to happen. So earlier, what used to happen in the case of the army, this was replicated in the state police forces, and especially in the states where the state had to take up anti-insurgency operations. Therefore, each group of districts became a theater, or each state became a theater. And therefore, what happened that within the theater, all the forces would get together. I mean, there would be a jointness of command. It had been tried effectively in Jammu Kashmir. It had been tried effectively in Darjeeling against the GNLF here and against the terrorists in Kashmir. And the same jointness of command and theaterization has worked in the LW areas as well. And then there is what we call no access to funds, because at the end of the day, you need money for any operation. So this financial fixation, or the cutting out of funds, that was a very important lever. And I wanted to share with you, there are some books that have been written on how the Naxals were getting their funding. There's a lovely book called The Incredible Banker, in which RED was read, Incredible Banker, by Ravi Subramaniam. It was actually it was a financial thriller in which he showed how there was a nexus between the Naxalites, between the contractors, between Russian suppliers, PDS dealers, and large banks through which all this funding would happen. In fact, part of the reasons why the FCRA is being strengthened, part of the reason why there's a lot of check on how foreign funds are moving into the country. This has been one factor in which the funding of the Naxals has become, it became a trickle, and now for all practical purposes, it is over. And I think one of the other factors that is there is that there was a point of time when China, or at least some elements within China, were keen to fund the LWE, but now that aspect has also become less and less and perhaps practically disappeared, because in the meanwhile, we have also become, the state has become very effective insofar as dealing with the PMLA cases, that case concern, that is the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, that has also stepped in. So I think these are all the factors together. Together, these 8 points have ensured that the final assault was very effective, and therefore that is why what was a major problem from the beginning of this century, the last 25 years, we've been able to ensure that this problem, that the problem is now, one can say, almost over. One can say that the last nail has been hammered, but we have to be careful. We have to ensure that the dragon never raises its head ever again. And for that, it is important that that I'm going to make a statement that the state must exercise its might, and the state has exercised its might. But after having exercised the might, the state must show that it must do the right thing. And the right thing is to focus on development, is to focus on education, to focus on health, to focus on livelihoods, to focus on startups, to focus on entrepreneurship, so that the ground conditions which were leading to left wing extremism, or which at least tried to provide a logical reason that why should people be opposed to the state, that must go away. The state, the society, the community, the people, we have to work together. We have to work in harmony, and that is the way in which we will be able to overcome not just the left-wing extremism, because that's practically dead, but because we want a state where there is equity, where there is equality, where there is fraternity, and where there is equality. Thank you.